Hello, everybody. So today is the third Friday of the month. It is a big options expiration day, which means that we often get weird price action. I'm going to use the word weird to describe this price action, right? Because, for example, Tesla was up very nicely on the day. Not the case, unfortunately, for Strategy, which was probably ATMing, and we have a few other companies that are on sale right now, and I want to go through a few of them. So the first company that is definitely a sell is OSCR. I find OSCR just too cheap. You may remember the retail hype, quote unquote. This stock was trending on X a few weeks ago. Everybody was bidding it up to $18, $17. Well, it's way down. It seems like the stock is down because it's had a flurry of downgrades by major banks. What the banks think seem to really impact the price of OSCR, and of course, it is grouped into this government program type healthcare, and the sentiment right now on government programs is cuts. There's gonna be a bunch of cuts. OSCR is not going to get the subsidies renewed, and since they don't get the subsidies renewed, they're going to be hurting, even though they've told us that the guidance did not assume for a renewal of the subsidies, the ACA subsidies, so the extra, the on-top subsidies. So anyways, it's noise if you're a long-term investor. It's likely noise, and no financial advice, but in my view, this is likely noise as a long-term investor, and the narrative may change 2 weeks from now. What is not noise is the facts. So the facts is, if you look at this company, it's 10x its revenue in next to no time. In a matter of, 5 years, 4 years, it more than 10x its revenue. The growth has been stellar. The growth, actually, if you look at past 12 months growth, it was 42%. That's how fast they grew. The stock is trading at a ridiculous. I mean, it's only a fraction of the forward revenue is what this stock is trading at. Only a fraction of its forward revenue, and I have to be faithful to my spreadsheet, which is, why do I like the stock? Well, I only like the stock because it's cheap. Because if this on enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth, if this stock was trading at like a 0.2, I wouldn't be interested. But the stock is trading at a 0.016. It's the second cheapest stock ever found on my spreadsheet in the history of the channel. The cheapest one being BioStem. The second cheapest is this one in the entire history of the channel. And, I understand why, because it's a business that I don't want to be in. I don't like that business very much because any changes to the ACA can hurt OSCR, but I think this is more than priced in. And the business, of course, of OSCR, the classic take, about a new business in that sector, in the health insurance sector, is that they use technology to have a low medical loss ratio. Medical loss ratio is the difference between the premiums that you take in and the payouts that you give out, and they use tech to make that lower and lower, and they probably use tech to deny certain claims and try to steer patients towards one option and another option, over another option, etc. They use tech to lower the cost, decrease the medical loss ratio, and then boom, you create profits. Something a little bullish about OSCR too is that as far as I see the new bill and the new budget, the cuts are mostly impacting Medicaid, and the whole idea of, if you're able-bodied, you can't have Medicaid anymore. At least that's the idea of the cuts. Like I said, it's not a business that I like, so I don't study it too closely. Knowing that it's cheap is good enough for me with this stock, and cheap, and really, in my view, it's very tough for it to get cheaper than this. But anyways, a lot of people seem to think that these Medicaid cuts actually could be good for OSCR, because what happens if you lose Medicaid? Well, what's the next option, right? The marketplace. An Affordable Care Act plan is probably the next option if you lose Medicaid and you still want to have insurance. So a lot of people seem to think they could actually benefit from the current administration cutting Medicaid. Not a business that I like, but a valuation that I absolutely love, and this is why I like OSCR very much at 13. Moving on to Nubank. Nubank is one of, whenever I do a video on Nubank, it's one of the least viewed videos of the channel. Nubank is kind of a SoFi of Latin America, I guess I'm going to say. In fact, for the longest time, they used to trade kind of in line with SoFi, not on stock price, but in valuation. The way I value these stocks, their valuation used to be very similar. For a little bit of time, Nubank was growing actually faster than SoFi. That has changed a little bit. Nubank's growth has stalled a little bit, but not too much. And the stock hasn't moved. I mean, this stock is essentially still at its IPO price. Still at the IPO price. We have a stock price who's roughly the same. When I look at explanations for that, of course, it's the leading neobank in Brazil, but they are in 4 other Latin American countries. They just got a banking license in Mexico, for example. But when I look at their main country of operation, Brazil, if I look at the exchange rate, well, guess what? Since their IPO, the exchange rate has roughly been flat. Right, it hasn't changed. If you look at the price of the Brazilian real in dollar, it hasn't changed. They've been trading roughly hand in hand. Over the long term, I expect, of course, the real to trade down compared to the dollar over the long run. And even then, that's not a guarantee. Even then, that's not a guarantee because the money printing of the dollar is very, very strong right now. So even then, I wouldn't be so sure. The point is it's been flat, so I can't really explain the stock price not doing much for 3.5, 4 years. I can't really explain that based on the stock price. What I see is a stock that hasn't moved, and I see a company whose number customers is through the roof, right? They have 119 million customers. The growth has been steady, heady, and they've been growing the average revenue per user steadily at a nice clip. So this is a steady, heady stock. This is a sleep well at night stock. It's cheap. It hasn't moved. At some point, when you have a coiled spring, at some point, it pops. And that's my thesis for Nubank. The stock was down today quite a bit, of course, and I consider that price to be low right now. Let's talk about the Real Brokerage. I've made a full analysis for Real Brokerage, and I've also addressed it in 2 videos. I am wanting to bet on a return of the housing market. Yes, the housing market's going to come back. People have been waiting to change homes, and we haven't had much in the way of real estate for the past 3 years. But Powell's going away. He's going away, at the very least in May. So we have 9 months to go, right? Maybe earlier. Some people hope earlier. And of course, whoever replaces Powell will be the most dovish of the doves. You literally have a dove in a suit at the Fed who's going to take the rates down, which means real estate's going to go back up, which means the market's going to anticipate that real estate picks back up, and thus I got to pick a winner in the space. You may have seen Open Door doubled in 3 days. Well, unfortunately for me, I didn't get back into Open Door. That was one of the stock that I had sold. I was very big on Open Door back in the day. Now I am kind of betting on REAX. I've initiated a position on REAX for Real Brokerage. They're a faster growing company. They're attracting the top agents of traditional brick and mortar brokers, and they're attracting them on the app. And of course, the app can scale. The app has fixed operation costs. It doesn't have buildings. It doesn't have employees, or very little, very few employees. There's employees, but very few, and they only work on AI. Only the top agents would really be interested, I think, in working for the Real Brokerage, especially in the way the commission works and everything works. So they've really set up a business. For the way I look at the Real Brokerage, they've set up a business that you're kind of able to go after the top agents, the bread and butter of your local brokerage firm in your local community. Real Brokerage is going after that top agent, and they're going after them how? Well, by having a really good incentive program, by offering them stock in the company, and by especially taking a smaller cut. And that's how they've been able to grow while real estate transactions are way down in the US over the past few years. They're way down, these transactions. And of course, a brokerage makes money on transaction count, right? How many transactions you have, you make your 3%. Well, they've been growing in a very, very high headwind environment. They've been growing revenue nicely. They've been growing their number of agents nicely. They are EBITDA profitable. which is very nice at 40 million, and for one full quarter, and their transactions are also going up nicely. Everything I see is a green flag on this one. Forward revenue growth is 45%. Right, that's my prediction, my number for the next 12 months. And of course, EBITDA margin is 3%, gross margin is 9%. That may sound really bad, but it's the industry. It's this industry, right? Right. On the other hand, look at the revenue, right? Revenue is huge, right? But you're going to trade only at a fraction of revenue. So for that industry, it's how we have to judge it. It's fine. It could go up. They're moving into ancillary services like title and all that sort of stuff, which could help them make more money. But I see a strong momentum in that company. I think they could be bigger, and I think they could be a good bet on the recovery of real estate, which inevitably happens when the Fed's going to drop rate, and the Fed is going to drop rates, in my view. Moving on to other deals of the day. Bitcoin was down nicely today. So today, as far as I'm concerned, was a good day to add to Bitcoin treasury companies. 3 stocks to discuss. Strategy was down a good 6% today. Saylor was likely using the ATM today. He was likely ATMing because it was down way more, of course, than the price of Bitcoin, and it was down more than the other, higher beta, riskier Bitcoin treasury companies like MetaPlanet or Smarter Web. MSTR was down more. So this is telling me that he likely ATM'd. And good for him, because he ATM at nearly 1.7 nearly. That's good enough for me. As long as he ATMs above a 1.5, I'm happy. So he was ATMing, so let's expect a big buy probably on Monday, and he probably wants to go strong before the earnings call, before the conference call. So that's very positive to me as the long-term shareholder. I'm perfectly fine with a small drop of 6%. That's really nothing. Moving on to MetaPlanet. MetaPlanet was slightly down on the day, ever so slightly. MetaPlanet is as cheap as it's been in recent months. It's trading at a 3 times price to NAV. So I think there could be an interesting multiple expansion opportunity in MetaPlanet because this stock has been able to acquire Bitcoin at a much faster pace. The fact that they operate in the Japanese market is very appealing. The people of Japan are yield-starved. They want high returns. They can't buy Bitcoin outright without paying a bunch of taxes when they sell. They have to own it in a retirement account. There's a lot of reasons as to why the Japanese market probably warrants a premium on a price to NAV, and right now I don't think that's reflecting this, and frankly the price to NAV at 3x is very fair right now for MetaPlanet because the stock has been growing Bitcoin much faster than strategy, much faster than strategy. And of course, the fastest horse, the fastest of them all, is the Smarter Web company, the fastest of the companies with more than 1,000 Bitcoin. I'm going to call it like that. Out of the companies who have more than 1,000 Bitcoin, they are the fastest. So kudos to Nick, Bitcoin B21. That's a great website for smarter investment guy. You can look at the speed at which Smarter Web has been able to grow the Bitcoin, growing very fast, much faster, a much steeper curve. Now, don't forget, we're going to go asymptotic in a while, right? I don't expect, and you can really see the beginning of the flattening of the curve. They're going to flatten in a while. That's for sure. But it still shows how strong they've started, compared to two other companies that I like very much, which is MetaPlanet and a MicroStrategy now called Strategy at the top right there. So I like the direction. I like the speed. I looked at the announcements. They've done another capital raise today, to the best of what I can say, something like 17 million pounds or something like that. So we should get an announcement soon about more buys and them growing the stack. And same on a price to NAV basis, the Smarter Web company is kind of the cheapest since since they kind of IPO'd, right? It's like in May, in early May, we had something about as cheap on the price to NAV basis of 5. We're back at a 5. You know, out of the 6 weeks that we're looking at right now, maybe 5 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks out of the 6, we had a price to NAV that was much higher for a smarter web company. So I consider it cheap as well right now, even though it dropped 5.7%. I consider it pretty cheap. And of course, let me conclude with that. It's the third Friday of the month. Weird things happen in markets on the third Friday of the month. You know, people gotta cover their trades, people gotta sell what's available, etc. Bitcoin dropped all day. All day it dropped. And next thing you know, when the markets close, what do you see? Bitcoin bounces back up. So I am optimistic as to the performance of Bitcoin over the weekend, although I honestly don't care because it's short term, and short term does not matter to me and does not matter to the viewer of this channel. We are a long-term investment channel. You know, if you don't want to own anything Bitcoin related for more than 4 years, you shouldn't own it at all, to quote Michael Saylor. And of course, you should not listen to anything I say because this is only entertainment. This is not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is just edutainment, entertainment. I am an entertainer. Please like. Please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me next. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.